And a very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Robbins Racing TV on this wet and drizzly Tuesday evening here in Fuji, Japan. You are, of course, tuning in for the Robbins Racing Touring Car Championship. We are in race 4 of 6 for this season, season 3, of course, in 2020. And things are certainly hotting up in our Drivers' Championship so far. The Moby's currently the one at the top of that table, but Stealth Sheep is going to do his very best to change that situation come the end of this race. Hope you're all safe out there wherever you're watching us inside the world. As you can see from your screens, we're set for a bit of a washout here at Fuji tonight. Wet weather scheduled for both of our races for the evening. We are currently in our first 10 minutes of practice before tonight's sprint race. 8 minutes remaining into that, and for those of you that aren't aware of our formatting for the RRTCC, there is going to be a 10-minute practice before each of our sessions for the night. We're then going to go into 10 minutes of qualification before the sprint race, and the sprint race itself is going to be 10 laps, as we see Kay Morse's lights go on there just to signify that he is now on a hot lap. So yes, 10 laps, should I say, of racing inside the sprint race. These lads are then going to have 10 minutes worth of practice to get themselves either back on track and work on those setups, or to get themselves a little bit of a break before we go into our second qualification session of the evening before the feature race. That will also be 10 minutes. And then our feature race is going to be 30 minutes worth of laps, and that will be decided pretty much tripled on the times set for the sprint race. So for those of you that had a look on our Instagram feed or our Twitter feed earlier on this morning, the leaderboards were posted up, but I will just give you a run through of those. So as I mentioned before, the Moby currently topping out the table on 185 points. Stealth Sheep in comparison, second place in the championship leaderboard so far this season. He's on 175 points. Now remember folks, 35 points for a win, 1 bonus point for pole position in both of our qualifying sessions for the evening, and also a further 1 bonus point for the fastest lap of both of the race sessions. So a total of 4 bonus points available for tonight's evening of racing, 70 points available if you can top out both of the races in first place. Let's move down the table then to third place. That Guitar Dude is currently sat there with 145 points, so a bit of a gap forming up between the top two. Then we're going to have in fourth Uniclark on 135 points, followed by Lightblade with 114. Then right behind him in sixth position is Bobby Dazzler on 105 points. Seventh position is currently set by Lecky, who I think is unable to join us this evening. We'll have to wait and see whether or not he can get into the lobby on time. Then just behind Lecky on 87 points, only 4 points difference, is Kay Morse, that we're currently tracking round now in his favoured BMW. Let's see whether or not he can make that rear-wheel drive BMW work on the wet track today. It looks as though he's keeping it on the black stuff within this practice session. We'll have to have a look at whether or not his times are competitive. So next in the running, just behind Kay Morse, is our lead coordinator for the RRTCC, is Lionsfoot with 82 points, only 5 points difference between those two. And then next up, we've got a 16-point deficit to Cobb Carl, followed by Evan, who again, unfortunately, is having to commit to his work commitments this evening. I'm sure that he'll be watching us on YouTube unless his boss is watching this, and if so, he's definitely not watching YouTube. He is currently hard at work. And then bottom of our current standings, it is Trotty on 47 points. Expect him to put up a good fight in this one. I know that a lot of practice has taken place when we realised that the weather was going to be wet, so I'm sure a lot of these boys will have well prepared. See that Guitar Dude currently topping out the practice times, only 7 times set at the moment then. times yet to be set by Cellsheep, Lightblade and Demobi. So just having a look at the stats before tonight's race. Demobi, of course, had those back-to-back wins last week at Zhuhai. He's actually been able to obtain a 50% podium rate throughout the whole of the season so far. And in comparison, I think altogether it's been 3 first place positions for Demobi and 3 fourth place positions for Demobi. A couple of those were quite controversial. I'm mainly thinking of Rapuna Park. Two controversial fourth places there. I think a contact with Thorsten Smith in one of the races and a contact with Lightblade right on the start-finish line. Fantastic race, that one. By all means, head over to our YouTube channel where you're watching now after this race and be sure to check out all of our footage so far from the season if you did miss any of those races. But yeah, Demobi so far, 3 wins, 3 fourth positions. If we compare that to Cellsheep and his podium rate, Cellsheep's actually achieving a better podium rate, which is why he's so close in those standing tables. He's got a 66.7% podium rate throughout the season. So that's what's keeping him within touching distance of Demobi. Of course, Demobi back-to-back champion in the touring car season so far into 2020. He's won both of the previous seasons and he's looking to become Rubbins Racing's first triple champion back-to-back. He'll be very keen to put himself down in our relatively short-lived history books, but it will be a record that will be hard to top. And he's been a dominant force throughout all of the seasons here within Rubbins Racing in the Touring Car Championship. Of course, one of our oldest serving championships here at RR. But these last couple of seasons in 2020, he's really made it his own full-time commitment in terms of his setups. He is a crucial member of the staff here. He's actually setting our hot lap challenges for all of our community members week in, week out. And these sort of challenges really help develop a driver's skill set in terms of dealing with cars that they're not used to, dealing with tracks that they might not often drive, and getting used to how to work best with a setup, especially in those high turbo cars of the 90s eras that we had to deal with last week. In fact, this week inside the Hot Lap Challenge, we're actually driving a BMW M3. I just need to check. I think it might be around the Nürburgring. Just bringing up the information now in the Hot Lap Challenge. Oh, beg your pardon. That was last week's. Sorry, that's actually the Thursday Night Lights. This week in our Hot Lap Challenge, it's the BMW V12 Le Mans car around Spa-Francorchamps. So that's going to be a very interesting one for all of our community members to get their teeth stuck into. So we're just coming up to the final minute now of our practice session. Looking down the lap times, looks as though that guitar dude Lightblade have found their sort of full flow at the moment, setting 151.9s. Demobi has gone out, I think it's only for 1 lap though. It was indeed, and then he's returned to the pits for the rest of the session, so maybe just saving the best for his qualification lap, trying and take all of the rest of the field by surprise. I'll have to wait and see on that one. So if you're watching this for the first time, or you're watching this for the 5th, 6th, 10th time here at RRTV, but you're yet to join this fantastic PlayStation 4 Project Cars 2 community, then by all means head yourself on over to www.rubbinsracing.co.uk. You'll find plenty of information there about what it is that we do. You'll also find information on how you can join our Discord server. And if you enjoy the content that we push out to you guys, by all means, claim as a donation. All of our funds that we bring in, we actually feed back into the community in terms of prizes or upgrades to our systems, just to try and bring you the best sort of coverage that we can for this competitive racing league. So the session's now over in terms of practice. These guys are just going to go out and finish their remaining laps. Just bringing up the purple sector times throughout all of that practice. That guitar dude, it's a 43 dead pretty much for sector 2. It looks as though sector 1 is a 25.5 and sector 3 is 43.6 seconds. Those are the purple sectors from our fastest lap in the session from that guitar dude. Let's wait and see what qualifying will bring. Just waiting on the lads to get back to the pits. Qualifying will then begin, and then in 10 minutes time we'll be getting tonight's first race underway, 10 laps around a rather drizzly Fuji GP circuit. As ever guys, if you want to keep me company in the box, let me know whereabouts you're watching it tonight's stream from. Also, let me know your predictions for the race. I'd love to know what your thoughts are. Is Stealth Sheep going to take hold of a back-to-back victories to put the fear into Demobi? We're going to see Lightblade pull one out of the bag. He's had some really good races, just some unfortunate finishes, especially with a couple of disconnects. So we'll have to wait and see with that one. Or is that Demobi just going to stamp his authority and bring himself even closer to Season 3's championship title? Free practice session is all done now, and we're going to jump into the first qualification session of the evening. Let's see who's going to be out first. Have a look from my space here inside the garage to try and see which car comes out. It looks as though Demobi's the first one to pounce. Easily recognisable livery there in the green and black Actrovision number 7 car. Keep an eye on this one, it's going to be flying through the evening, I'm sure of it. Looks as though it was Stealth Sheep as well behind him. Oh, I beg your pardon, that's that guitar dude, I believe. It is indeed. Lapboard just on the side, just confirming that. So Demobi and that guitar dude looking to get some early laps away. Looks as though Demobi has got a full race worth of fuel in his tank as well. That's interesting. I think quite often we see him running with low fuel loads. Maybe he's trying to use the extra weight for that extra bit of grip in these wet conditions. We'll have to wait and see whether or not that's a tactic that pulls off, or whether or not we see him jump into the pits after a little bit of time, dropping the fuel load out of that car just to pull out a couple of extra tenths from wherever he can. So as these guys are warming up, we are of course in the Fuji Speedway on the GP circuit. We're just outside of Oyama in Japan, in the foothills of the beautiful Mount Fuji. This actually is, I think, one of the second oldest racetracks, just behind Honda's Suzuka circuit, if my facts are correct. And it was originally due to be an oval course. However, it went massively over budget due to the constraints of the land surrounding it. Of course, a very mountainous region, as we can see in the sort of elevations around this circuit. And it was actually visited a couple of times under a couple of drivers' advice that they're not going to be able to make it into an oval, and they then decided to make it into a road-going circuit. It has seen some developments since that time, and it is now of course a fully dedicated race circuit. Not many street elements about this. It has seen some iterations across the years, mainly into the final sector where they've actually lessened the speed. It did used to be a huge banked oval, but they've made it a little bit more technical over the years, and that made it more suitable for hosting Formula 1 races, which it has done with sort of shared mutual respect with Suzuka over the years. You'll find some absolutely amazing vintage footage of the Formula 1 cars blasting around the old Fuji Speedway though, as well as some new ones back in around about 2005-2006. So Demobi at the moment is currently setting the fastest Sector 1. I did just see flashing up in my telemetry though that Bobby Dazzler's actually setting the fastest in Sector 2. Just worth mentioning as well, ladies and gents, that track limits are actually disabled for tonight's sprint race, as it has been throughout all of Season 3 here in the RRTCC. Then when it comes down to the feature, the track limits are once again enabled, and these guys then have to make sure that they stick within those white lines so that they don't get punished by the race director. So looking at Demobi's Sector 2, he's ever so slightly slower than the current purple Sector 2 of that Qatar dude. However, he is just about to cross the line. He just came out of Panasonic, and let's see what he posts up here on the board. I'm sure it's going to be quickest than the 2 laps recorded at the moment. There it is, ladies and gents, the benchmark set and immediately taken away by that Qatar dude. That Qatar dude looking strong today. In the number 55 Emochi car. Let's follow him around and we'll be able to see the differences that these two guys make. In fact, I'm just going to jump into the chase cam on this one. Try and get a different look at the lines, and it should give us a bit of an indication as well on where the water is starting to gather up around this track. Just coming up to the hairpin now. Doesn't look as though there's any puddles forming on the apex of that hairpin. In fact, no puddles formed either side of the track, which is good news. Not the easiest corner at the best of times, but with any standing surface water, that's going to become a bit of a nightmare. Looks as though Dunlop's clear as well. Now, light rain is forecast throughout the entirety of this evening, so we'll have to wait and see whether or not any puddles form up, especially during the race conditions, if there isn't any sort of break in the weather. But the track looking in pretty good nick at the moment. It's obviously glossy from the rain, but no major puddles to speak of, as we see that Qatar dude there looked as though he was a little bit tentative around that final Panasonic bend, just making sure they didn't knock into Demobi and basically ruin his next lap around by scrubbing off speed with any contact. Jump back into trackside now, because I don't think any quickest laps are going to be set here that time around. We'll have to wait and see. It's not looking at it from the sectors. No improvements made by that Qatar dude or Demobi that time around. Kane Morse has got himself into the second row at the moment, third place in the qualification times. And we saw that inside the practice as well. That BMW looks as though it's getting around this wet track pretty handily. We have, of course, though, seen issues with Kane Morse keeping it on the straight and narrow throughout the race. Hopefully that isn't going to be the case today, and he can try and keep the car facing in the right direction and bring it on home in a place that he'll be happy with. For those of you that are joining us a little bit later than the start of this stream, we are unfortunately missing 2 drivers from the action in tonight's race. That's why you're seeing a smaller than usual grid size. Fortunately, Lecky and Evan unable to make it to tonight's race. They will hopefully be back next week. But looking at where all the action's going on in the league standings, all of these boys pretty keen to get out there and prove themselves in their fight for this championship. Qatar dude looking like he's got the advantage at the moment. Not seeing many green sectors coming in. I'm wondering whether or not track conditions have worsened ever so slightly. We can see that Qatar dude is actually running in a qualification load of fuel, 4 litres worth of fuel currently in his tank. He's got enough for one more lap, I think, whereas Demobi is running with full race fuel, I do believe. So the difference of only 2/10 isn't much at all for Demobi, considering his car is going to be quite a bit heavier, and we actually see that Qatar dude now coming in. I wonder whether or not that is to refuel. Let's jump back over to Demobi. He's actually used 7 litres, I believe, of fuel so far in this qualification run, and he set himself 3 laps, so that shows just how much fuel they're using at the moment in these conditions. So let's get another brief look in the action. Let's follow Kane Morse around. Like I say, all drivers at the moment set in white sectors, so no improvements being made currently on my telemetry screens. The only person that is showing improvements was Uniclark last time out, and he's only set 2 laps, so he's actually been sat in the pits for quite some time. Looks as though he's resigned himself to a 5th place because he's not going to be able to get out and set a new lap in time for this one. Looks as though that guitar dude as well has pretty much called it job done, taking just shy of 2 minutes to get around this track, and he's currently sat in the pits, so he's putting the pressure on Demobi to try and knock him off that pole position. Interesting to see Stealth Sheep as well sat in the pits. He obviously feels like he's got as much as he can get out of his Renault Megane in this qualifying session, because he'll be desperate to get his hands on as many of those bonus points as he can, as we see that first mistake coming out from K Morse. That is the issue with the BMW. Let's go on over to our current championship leader, Demobi. He's currently sat in 2nd place. Looks as though his sector times aren't going to show any improvement from the 151.83 set on his 2nd lap around. It was actually his first hot lap as well. So it looks as though it's going to be 2nd place on that first row for Demobi. Keep your eyes peeled on the BMW of K Morse. Anybody that's raced these touring cars within Project Cars 2 know how quickly this thing gets off the line. In fact, you only have to watch our previous races here at the RRTCC this season with K Morse featured to see how quickly he can get off the line and in front of most of the rest of the field. That Dave looks as though he's strolling a little bit. He's usually a sort of pole position specialist. We see him going out and blasting hot laps, but doesn't look as though wet track conditions at Fuji seem to be suiting him. He's currently sat in 7th in the qualification grid, and it doesn't look as though he's going to make any improvements. White sectors across the board. He's round about half a second off the pace of 5th place and 6th place in sector 1, and a couple of seconds off the Uniclark in 5th place in sector 2 as well. So the track conditions have definitely worsened. Uniclark, of course, only going out within the first couple of minutes of this session, and then he's been sat in the pits ever since. So expect it to get much worse as the race goes on. We'll keep an eye out for any puddles and surface water forming. But that's all for the qualification. Let's have a run through the running order. That guitar dude does enough for pole position, so it's going to be a bonus point to him in his fight for the championship. Remember, folks, he is currently sat in 3rd position. Demobi joins him on the front row in 2nd place with K Morse in 3rd, Stealth Sheep in 4th. Uniclark, after his 2nd lap out, does enough for 5th. Kovkarl joins him in 6th in that row. Then it's Lightblade and Lion's Foot next row down, followed by Bobby Dazzler and Tro at the back of the running order. We're going to be bringing you tonight's first sprint race of the evening. Remember, ladies and gents, 10 laps around this wet Fuji circuit. No mandatory pit stop. The track limits have been turned off and damage is cranked up to full. Sat on the grid now as the boys get their setups ready, fill up with fuel, maybe adjust any tyre pressures that they may have played about with to try and eke out all of those hundredths of seconds inside the qualification time. They're going to want to make sure that they get this right. Can imagine as well, with damage turned on, they'll have to make sure that their race strategies have got their tyre pressures set. The last thing you want to do is come in for a little bit of damage repair and have your tyre pressure played about with by your pit crew. As mentioned earlier, keep your eyes on that BMW sat in 3rd place. Let's see how well this gets off the line. We're about to see lights out here. at Fuji in tonight's sprint race. And they're away, and it looks as though it's a good start. Demobi getting a little bit bogged down, it seemed, as we see the BMW motor on forwards. So Demobi ever so hesitant off the line. He has got the inside coming in as they go 3 wide here, and things looking to get a little bit hairy. Everybody looking to get away through quite cleanly though. So it is currently K Morse with that fantastic start in the BMW, followed by Demobi with that retard, who currently sat in third. Uniclark's made his way up into 4th place, and Stealth Sheep is the one that's actually fallen a place behind. He's got Kov Carl in close quarter company as well, as we see that retard dude making a bit of a move up the outside. He's going to cut himself up into the inside. He's not. He's going to hold that position for the next corner, and it looks as though he's got the job done on Demobi. And actually Demobi's left it open as well for Uniclark around the outside next time. Let's see whether or not Uniclark's got the momentum. Doesn't look as though he has this time around, as we see K Morse actually opening up quite a substantial lead, almost a second, and we're not even halfway through lap 1 here, coming up to the Dunlop corner. All drivers looking to get away cleanly, no major contact to speak of, and that's what we want to see in these wet conditions. Demobi now looks to be on the attack against that Qatar dude, potentially pulling out a cutback, but that Qatar dude could see it coming. He's going to hold that inside line for the next corner, make Demobi work hard for it, and Demobi appears to back out just to make sure he can get the drive. In fact, Demobi's gone for a cutback up the inside, and it looks as though, depending on whether or not he gets the drive, he might well get this done. It doesn't look as though he's got the momentum though. Let's jump into the chase cam of Demobi, try and get a better view of this. In fact, it looks as though the slipstream is pulling off. We see him pulling alongside now, which means that he's side by side. He can challenge for position, and he's got the inside line into the next corner here and there on the limiter. Both cars of Demobi and that Qatar dude appear to be tuned to perfection, hitting the limiter just towards the end of the straight, and Demobi makes it simple to get past him. That Qatar dude's going to try and go around the outside into Coca-Cola corner. At a quick corner, if you can take it in a dry condition around that outside line, but Demobi knows that it's going to be tricky in these wet conditions, and he just holds middle of the corner, missing the apex ever so slightly just to off-put that Qatar dude a bit. Fantastic racecraft from the current championship leader. However, all of this battling has allowed Uniclark now to join the fray in that Qatar dude's battle for 2nd place. Have of course got Stealth Sheep not too far behind them as well. Keep an eye on him inside that as we see Uniclark making a late dive there, maybe trying to play it clever with the brakes, and it looks as though it just comes together a little bit with that monster livery Stealth Sheep. Stealth Sheep's now got ahead of him though. Uniclark making a bit of a mistake under braking, and it looks as though it's cost him a position. So K Morse has pulled out around about 3/4 to a second's worth of a lead, but that isn't much, especially when we've seen how temperamental that BMW can be in these wet weather conditions. We'll have to wait and see whether or not he manages to keep it on the straight and narrow between those white lines on track. If he gets a hint of the green stuff, it's going to cost him majorly. So we can see there Stealth Sheep has maintained that position above Uniclark. Light Blade not too far behind him as well, 3.6 seconds behind the leader at the moment. Demobi's actually set the purple lap that last time around by around about half a second. So Demobi finding his flow now. Doesn't look as though anybody else is able to match him either, because K Morse was actually the 2nd fastest that time around. It looks as though K Morse is close to being challenged now. Fantastic angle as we see these three coming close into the corner. That BMW just appears to be able to pull out a little bit when it can get the power down. I wonder whether or not K Morse is taking a bit of a risk in terms of his differential settings, as we see that Qatar dude having a look up the inside. As we saw before though, Demobi is going to be able to hold the inside line in the next corner, and he's going to have to come back and try another tactic, I think. Have a look a little bit further down the running order between Uniclark and Kov Carl. Carl is getting involved into this action between Uniclark and Lightblade. Looks as though Uniclark has run deep into Dunlop again. Seems to be missing out on his braking spot a little bit, and that almost opened the door to Carl. It has let Lightblade through, but let's join the action back at the front. That guitar dude hassling the back end of Demobi at the moment. Demobi going a little bit defensive into Panasonic, and I'm beginning to see that guitar dude pull the Demobi as we saw last time around. Doesn't look as though he's close enough to take advantage of the slipstream up the inside. We'll have to wait and see what the difference is by the time they reach the end of the start-finish straight. They have pulled out a 1.3 second difference though to the 4th place of Stealth Sheep, which is quite interesting. These 3 guys at the front really are putting some quick laps down as we see that guitar dude step it up into the inside. Looks as though he's made it happen round Dachi. Is he going to be able to maintain it all the way through into Coca-Cola as we see Demobi around the outside? Is he going to dare to throw it in with little braking? It doesn't look as though he's able to in these wet weather conditions. They continue side by side though into turn 4, coming through 100R. And Demobi with the inside line. I think the place is going to be Demobi by the time we reach the end of 100R into the hairpin. Perhaps not. Would wonder whether or not that guitar dude was going to have to brake quite heavily because of his offset line coming into the hairpin. Looks as though he lost a bit of his advantage, but not too much. He still maintained the position, and all the while K Morse has now set up a 2.5 second gap to second place. K Morse will be licking his chops for this race win. It will be his first one of the season. Obviously practice coming off as we see a little bit of door-to-door contact there between Demobi and that guitar dude. Stealth Sheep is now on the approach though. He's going to get him stuck right into some of this action as these two battle it out, and a big bump up the arse end there of Demobi from that guitar dude. That looked as though it was a little bit of afters from a couple of corners before. Getting a little bit heated here. It looked as though Demobi's was purely unintentional as he got spat off the curb coming out of turn 13, whereas that guitar dude did look a bit cheeky. Let's have a look here though. We've got that guitar dude and Demobi side by side here. Stealth Sheep doing his best to try and get into the slipstream with these and try and make a move into the next corner. K Morse all the while has made up a 5.4 second gap to them as the second and third place approach Dachi corner. So advantage maintains to Demobi. Stealth Sheep is now challenging that guitar dude, and it looks as though Lightblade is soon to get involved into the action as well. He's less than a second behind this battle between second and fourth. So anything can happen. We're halfway through the race at the moment, and K Morse has just set a green sector 1. Going miles quicker than the rest of these guys. Our first place leader, K Morse, in that BMW, really making it work this week at Fuji in the wet. Would not have expected that before the race started. Especially how he coped in our previous wet weather race. He really just struggled to keep the car going in a straight line for more than 3 or 4 laps, but he's obviously got it firing on all cylinders this evening. So it is K Morse leading on Demobi. He's got that guitar dude for company as we see. Demobi has since pulled out a bit of a gap as we see perhaps a little bit of glitching going on in the background there. I thought Uniclark had completely lost it. Let's have a look at what's going on between Uniclark and his battle for 5th place between Lightblade. Coming pretty close. He's riding into that slipstream, coming onto the start finish straight. Looks as though he's going to move up to the inside on the way down. Not the slipstream at the moment, but it looks as though he's gained the momentum from it, and he has of course got the inside line. Let's have a look what happens going into the braking of the Dachi corner. We've seen Uniclark making a couple of mistakes under brakes. It looks as though he just falls back into line, doesn't want to make any catastrophic mistakes there. costing him potential points with the stewards. So Demobi still holds on to second place. K Morse is romping it home with a 6-second lead to the rest of this pack. In fact, I will bring you up the map now just so you can see the difference. K Morse currently going through the hairpin while the rest of them are just coming out the back end of 100R. Takatari looks as though he's about to make a move up the inside though. Through the hairpin. Looks as though he's made that one stick as well. Have a look as they go through 300R. The Moby still maintains that position, braking heavily into Dunlop. And that guitar dude is just going to have to try again. Rest of the field really close behind them. Looks as though we've got Kovkarl just entering the view, and then Lions Fault was just right in the background of the action here. Not sure what's happened to Bobby Dazzler and Tro in this race. They've fallen way behind the rest of the running order. Looks as though their lap time's just unable to compete with the rest of the boys out on the field. None of the pack able to compete with K Morse though. He's currently lapping a 151, pretty much there or thereabouts, lap in, lap out. Whereas the rest of the boys seem to be set in a 153 at best. Currently set by Demobi as we see that guitar dude right into the slipstream. He moves out towards the outside coming into the action. Demobi's very close to that inside. He's going to have to get over a little bit if he's going to want to be able to take this turn correctly. As we see him do so. See that guitar dude just backing off, but Demobi's actually run a little bit wide, got hold of a little bit of that AstroTurf on the runoff, and he's going to have to try and fight again for his second position. See a battle forming up as well in the background between Stealth Sheep and Lightblade and Uniclark. Looks as though Uniclark's about to make a move up the inside and get it done as well. Of course, Lightblade is going to have the inside next turn around, but that looks as though it is job done and dusted for Uniclark. Seen a few braking mistakes from Uniclark though. Is he going to hold on to it? We see him there missing the apex wildly, and that's going to allow Lightblade to come back on through and challenge again side by side into 100R, as 300R rather. Well, look, this is where we've seen Uniclark making a couple of mistakes. Looks as though he's learning from them. Gets that one spot on, if not a little bit slow, but it looks as though a little bit slow is a little bit better than Lightblade's slightly tetchy entry into Dunlop. Had to recover his line a couple of times there. Let's see what's going to come of it. Looks as though Lightblade's able to hold on to it, gets a load of AstroTurf, but that's not going to harm him too much. Coming into Panasonic. But we do see Uniclark move up the inside, bit of a cleaner line there, and he's outside of the slipstream, but let's see whether or not he can get any advantage up the inside line. We'll chase these guys all the way into turn one. So Uniclark is just losing a little bit of pace in terms of his speed with Lightblade. Let's see what happens into turn one. Rest of the running order, K Morse is currently leading to that guitar dude ahead of Demobi. Stealth Sheep is also in that action as well, and then we fall back to Lightblade and Uniclark that we're currently watching the battle unfold here for 5th place. Lightblade holds on to it for now though. Shuts that door clean on Uniclark. Uniclark's going to come back and fight for it though. Running around the outside, about to cut in if he can. You see Lightblade there getting a lot of grass. That's going to potentially affect his traction coming into the braking at the next corner. These guys now exchanging paint across the wing mirrors. No change in the action ahead of them. K Morse still leading to that guitar dude who's ahead of Demobi and Stealth Sheep. But this battle for 5th place is really hotting up. Uniclark trying to get the better of Lightblade at the moment as we see Kovkarl there make an absolute meal of his braking into Dunlop. Just seeing Bobby Dazzler come back around the rear end of the screen there. It looks as though Lightblade's still able to pin Uniclark back at the moment. It looks as though he's just holding him up as well a little bit. Not sure whether or not that was intentional, but just holding him up a little bit into the braking through nets. And on for another drag down to the turn 1. Looks as though Uniclark's got it done. Lightblade jumps back into the slipstream and he's going to, I imagine, make a move coming into turn 1. Have to wait and see whether or not he decides to jump outside of him. Big potential for contact here. Hopefully both drivers will get through clean and respectfully, as we see the track is definitely wetter into the braking area of Daihatsu. So Lightblade gets it, job done. Good racecraft there from our Welsh driver. Lightblade knew exactly what he wanted to do through the braking of Daihatsu and got it done nice and clean. Up top we see the number 7 Actual Vision car of Demobi has got the better of that Guitar Dude in the penultimate lap. So K Morse looks as though he's had an absolute belter throughout here. We haven't followed him much because we've had plenty of action going on behind him. But it does look as though he's had an almost flawless race. He's pulled out a 10-second lead in 10 laps. Does look as though he slowed his pace down ever so slightly. I can imagine that that is risk elimination, just to make sure that he can bring this one home. It will be his best finish of the season, and it's going to do wonders for his current 8th place, I do believe, position in the championship standings. So Demobi now still holding off that Guitar Dude. Stealth Sheep is waiting eagerly in the background, waiting for either of these guys to make a mistake, but it doesn't look as though it's going to come. One more lap to go now. 4K Morse as he crosses the line. Final lap for these guys, and we can see the distance made. This is around about 1 mile of straight that you can see from start to finish on this start-finish line at Fuji. So almost a mile back the rest of the field. So much time between them in just 10 laps, as we see Demobi making a move up the inside of that Guitar Dude. Looks as though he's made it stick as well. We've seen these two exchanging places throughout this race. Stealth Sheep all the while just waiting there eagerly for one of them to make a mistake. I don't think it's going to come throughout this race. Have to wait and see though. Never say never. We've seen Demobi get involved in a couple of final corner incidents throughout this season. Did mention one earlier, particularly nasty one with Lightblade in Rapuna Park. Wasn't even on a corner, it was on the final straight, and the two cars just came together, spun out and gifted a win to that Guitar Dude. Let's have a look at where K Morse is now. Looks as though he's just coming through the final sector here. Through turn 13, 14. About to come through nets and into Panasonic. For what has been an absolutely flawless run from our former touring car veteran. He actually featured predominantly in the Clio Cup throughout 2020. In seasons 1 and 2, but he's come back to touring cars back in his classic I-back BMW, and he's come out today with an absolute wondrous win. Over 13.5 seconds separating him in second place. Well done to K Morse. Perhaps he's found himself as a bit of a wet weather master, but Demobi does enough to take second place ahead of that Guitar Dude, who in turn pips Stealth Sheep in the points for the championship standings. That's going to bring those two very close indeed after that race. Looks as though Lightblade gets the better of Uniclark in the end for 5th place. Uniclark finishing in 6th, and then it looks as though Kovkarl has done enough for 7th place ahead of Lionsfoot. Then we're going to have Bobby Dazzler rolling in 9th with Tro just in the background there in that red and yellow livery. Renault Megane just about to cross the line. So that's our sprint race underway. There aren't going to be any penalties, so the order that I called them out will be their finishing order. K Morse taking the win, followed by Demobi. That Guitar Dude just getting overdone by Demobi in the end. Fantastic battle throughout. Got 19 minutes of racing inside this sprint race. Stealth Sheep does enough for 4th place, followed by Lightblade in 5th. Uniclark unable to get past Lightblade in 6th position. We then had Kovkarl in 7th, Lionsfoot in 8th, with Bobby Dazzler in 9th and Tro in 10th position. As I mentioned earlier, folks, we're going to go into a 10-minute practice session once the league coordinator gets it set up. We're then going to have 30 minutes racing here on the wet weather conditions of Fuji GP. Of course, the track limits are now going to be enabled, and a pit stop is going to be mandatory for all of these guys. We're hopefully going to talk with Stealth Sheep as well, it seems, throughout this break. Once the room is set up, hopefully Jeff, aka Stealth Sheep, one of our staff members here at RR, looking to challenge Demobi through the season. We'll have to wait and see whether or not he can do it with 2 races remaining after tonight. But we'll wait until Lionsfoot has got the room set up, and I'll get Stealth Sheep invited over for a couple of questions before we let him get his practice on. Until then, folks, get that kettle brewed up, get yourselves comfortable, because we're going to have 30 minutes of Fuji coming up next. So ladies and gents, the free practice is set up. Back underway here at Fuji GP. Hopefully now we're going to hear from, as I mentioned earlier, one of our main stewards here at Rubbins Racing. You'll know him as Stealth Sheep. We know him as Jeff. He's been a driver here at RR for quite some time. And hopefully he's going to be able to join us on the microphone soon so that we can hear a little bit about how his season's going so far, how he's coping around this track in the wet, and what his predictions are throughout all of the championships that he drives in. Hi, Stealth Sheep. I'm very well, thanks, mate. How are you? Yeah, it looked to be a tricky one, that one. You seem to hold your own there when the battle was going on between that Qatar dude and Demobi. I've got to say, I was quite surprised by the pace of Kane Morse. He struggled in the BMW throughout most of this season, but it looks as though he's got it together here in the wet at Fuji. But yeah, the battle between Demobi and that Qatar dude, did that maybe open up some doors for you, or do you feel like your pace was just good enough on its own merit? Well, that's got to be good going into the feature race. I mean, we've seen enough of these feature races to know that plenty of things can happen, especially in wet conditions. That Qatar dude, though, just before this race, he was 30 points behind you in the championship standings. He is, of course, going to get a little bit of advantage going into this one. Do you reckon it's going to be sort of tied between you, him, and Demobi into the championship? I mean, hopefully you're looking to try and win the thing, but I mean, you're racing alongside him. Do you reckon that Qatar dude's got enough to get himself up there? Yeah. Well, I'm a big admirer of Demobi inside a touring car, but nobody wants to see somebody completely dominate a championship. But I think luckily we've got such a good driver pool together now that people can challenge him inside these touring car classes, and yeah, the fight really seems to be hotting up. It was funny that you mentioned as well the battles and main overtaking zones going into turn one. I've noticed a lot of overtaking throughout quite a few sections, actually, especially between Demobi and that Qatar dude. Coca-Cola Corner was one where sort of places were getting exchanged. I even saw places being exchanged at the hairpin, which is traditionally quite a tough place to do it. Where do you think your strongest place is? Obviously you mentioned turn one. Have you got any other strong points or weak points on the circuit? Yeah. Fantastic. Well, I'll leave you to get yourself onto track and get some practice done. Thanks very much for joining us, Jeff. It's been a pleasure as always, mate. All the best into the feature. Hopefully we'll see those lap times come down once you've put a little bit of top end into your car. Speak to you soon. Take care, mate. So there we heard from Stealth Sheep, aka Jeff, one of the staff members here at Rubbins Racing. Absolute pleasure to speak to him on the stream and for you guys to hear his dulcet Lincolnshire tones. So it seems as though missing out a little bit of top end, but I mean he quite clearly respects the drive from K Morse. I think all of us can in that BMW. 13.5 seconds difference. He didn't have anybody to fight with. I mean, he shot straight off the line from third place, got right up to the front of the pack by turn 1. And the rest, as they say, was history. Putting everybody into his wake. He had around about 3 seconds, I think, by the end of lap 3, and then just continued to pile on the seconds through the race. So what do you think, folks? Is it going to be a back-to-back set of wins for K Morse? Is he going to dominate inside that BMW around this wet Fuji circuit? Or are we going to see a little bit more action up front between Demobi, potentially even that Guitar Dude? I think that Guitar Dude is definitely looking strong on the pace. Uniclark has managed to pull a 1 minute 50.2 out of absolutely nowhere. That's the quickest lap that we've seen so far today, and the track conditions really haven't changed a great deal. Got Ben Gattier on the stream. He's back in K Morse to do it for the Bimmers. I've got to say, Ben, it does look as though the BMW looks really strong here. I think it's just a question of whether or not we get any puddles forming up on track, or whether or not he gets caught up with his race strategy. Remember, folks, there will be a mandatory pit stop inside this session, and the track limits are turned on as well. So any breach across the track limits is going to result in either slowdowns or time being added on by the race director. So these drivers have around about 2 minutes just to get themselves adjusted, get the settings right. Looks as though Demobi there just practicing a pit entry. Crucial thing to do that on one of these circuits. The last thing you want to do is get slapped with a speeding in the pit lane penalty. They really do cost you a lot of time. You'll be lucky to come away with anything less than 15 seconds for speeding in the pit lane, and it really ramps up quite quickly. Akataru looks to be keeping around about the same pace as he was in the race that we saw previously in the sprint. Did look as though you guys were struggling to hear Stealth Sheep previously. Apologies if you couldn't hear him during that interview. Fortunately, it was coming through loud and clear on mine, so potentially have to adjust the levels next time we get somebody into the box. Final minute of practice. We are then going to go into 10 minutes of qualification for tonight's feature race. Whilst we're waiting for this practice to conclude, let me tell you a little bit about what we've got coming up during the week. So, as ever, in Rubbins Racing, our next race after the touring cars is going to come on Thursday night for our fan favourite Thursday Night Lights race. This week, where I'm just bringing it up now, I'm pretty sure we're taking a BMW M3, I believe. I actually got it a little bit messed up last time. It is indeed a Group A BMW M3 around the Circuit of the Americas National Circuit. That, of course, starts at our regular time of 8 PM UK time, so that is British summertime. We will be having our latest addition to the commentator, Lecky, Alex_2000 on the mic. So join him on Thursday for the Thursday Night Lights series. Then on Friday, it's going to be our GT5 Ginetta Championship. Things really hotting up in that one as well. It looks as though Lightblade's soon to be making, he's got about 15 points lead at the moment above Uniclark inside that championship. So we actually saw Lightblade and Uniclark really battling out inside the touring cars this evening. He's also battling it out with Uniclark inside the GT5 championship. That is also streamed, unfortunately, only text commentary on that one, but that's Friday night at our usual time of 8 PM UK British summertime. Then on Saturdays we have our latest addition to the RR calendar, which is the IndyCar Championship. This one isn't broadcast as of yet, definitely proving tricky for a lot of the lads as they try and adapt to these Indy cars around a mixture of oval and race circuits. And then Sunday morning is my very own Formula Renault Championship at 10:30 AM in the morning. That one proving to be very difficult. As I mentioned, on Sunday we actually took our Formula Renaults around the fantastic Monaco circuit. But next week we're actually getting ourselves back to some GPs. And then Sunday evening, it is definitely one of the fan favourites. It's our GT3 Championship. The battle between Duftinho and Thorsten Smith continues in that one. Make sure you don't miss it. It's really hotting up. And of course, if you're tuning in for the first time and would like to know more about what we do here at Rubbins Racing, head on over to www.rubbinsracing.co.uk and you'll find all the information about us, how to join us, or if you enjoy what we do, how to donate to us so that we can pump that community funds back into our community and offer our 200 plus strong community of drivers the best experience that they can for clean racing. If you're on the PlayStation as well, you can also add Rubbins Racing as a PlayStation friend. You'll quite often find clean racing lobbies hosted by our members of staff on there throughout the day where you can get involved, get out of those public lobbies with all of the rammers and long range missile hunters, get yourself into a clean racing lobby no matter which time zone you're in and enjoy some close competitive racing. So we are now into our qualification session. Let's see whether or not the adjustments made by Stealth Sheep are going to help him in terms of bringing his qualification pace down. Let's also keep an eye out, as we are at the moment, on Uniclark. Set an absolute monster of a lap in that practice session. He'll definitely be hoping to try and recreate that with a, I think it was a 1:51, was it? First guy to get sub... sorry, I think it was a 1:50. Fortunately, I didn't write it down, but it was an absolute monster. At least a second and a half quicker than I think I've seen any other lap time come up throughout all of today's sessions. Let's see what he's got. Just about to cross the line, we see his lights go on, indicating that he is now on a hot lap. We've only got Tro in the pit lane at the moment. All of the drivers out on track. In fact, all of them look to be really close together. We can see the black and yellow monster livery of Stealth Sheep, and next to him the blue and red livery of Bobby Dazzler, I believe. Uniclark stepping out the back end there, heavy under the brakes. Let's see his tactic into Coca-Cola. I'm really intrigued as to how much these guys... It looked as though it was just a lift-off from Uniclark into Coca-Cola. So that is the usual line that you take from it. Slight lift-off and just trust in the grip. Looks as though he's able to really hoon it around. Let's bring up his sectors as they come on in. So it looks as though Stealth Sheep did have the purple sector. It's now gone over to Lightblade. They're going to come thick and fast, ladies and gents, as these guys begin their train on their first hot lap. Well, it looks as though Lightblade's got the advantage at the moment. Sector 1 time of 25.305. In comparison, that Qatar dude currently with a 25.364. So only 500ths or so separating those. Uniclark looks as though he's gone fastest in Sector 2, but he is only the first person to set a Sector 2 time. So beg your pardon for that missed bit of information. He is continuing to hold on to that purple Sector 2 though. So Uniclark now enters the start-finish straight. Let's see what he can do in terms of his lap time. Coming across the line then with a 151.3. Quick lap for sure. That's about the race pace. In fact, that's about the qualification pace that they were set in last time around. So Uniclark really putting his best foot forward there. Let's have a look. Stealth Sheep comes in. He's about, he's 57 tenths off the pace. Lightblade does enough for second at the moment, but Uniclark has really pulled out the bag in terms of his pace. Don't know what changes he's made to that setup, but it sure has worked. That Qatar dude's come close. Only 4800ths separate those two at the moment. In fact, let's jump over to Demobi at the moment. I think he was out on a cold lap last time around. I think this is his first hot lap. In fact, I'm maybe misled. He's just put in his Sector 1 time of 36 seconds. That's 10 seconds off the pace, so I do believe I'm mistaken there. Very warm welcome to Evan. It looks as though he's managed to join us, clocked off for the evening in terms of work, and he can now get his race on. Let's switch back over to that Qatar dude at the moment. Uniclark, interestingly, gone green in Sector 1. He's not been able to beat his Sector 2 time though. Not too far away from what he set last time though. So Lightblade enters the pits, potentially making a few little adjustments here before he gets himself back out on track. 4 minutes remaining of this second qualification session of the evening. That Qatar dude about to cross the line. Doesn't look as though it's going to be any major improvements at the moment, whereas Demobi looks as though he's cranked up the speed. In fact, it looks as though he's got himself in all sorts of a mess. That car looks written off from the look of it. Could just be a glitch in it, but that might have been why there was an extra 10 seconds in his Sector 1 time last time around. Potentially wondering where he could have caught. The only real place to catch, I think, is the hairpin. Or maybe Coca-Cola corner if you get a little bit too sideways and catch the Armaco there. But that car looking way out of shape. That looks as though it's been on its roof. So Lightblade at the moment is showing up as a best lap, but I do believe that one's been invalidated, or maybe just a false reading from my telemetry screen. Demobi looks as though he's on a pretty hot one though at the moment. We're about to see him climbing right up the order. Let's have a look at what it's worth by the time he crosses over the start-finish line. Set a green Sector 2. He didn't set a green Sector 1, but his pace is looking pretty quick. He's only 3/10 slower than that Qatar dude in Sector 1. So we're about to see him jump right up the order with this lap. Crossing the line, and it's enough for 7th place at the moment. 2¼ minutes remaining, so he's going to have to remain out on track. He has got 7 litres of fuel left, so it should be enough for 1, potentially 2 more laps here. At Demobi, Uniclark, interestingly, has stayed in the pits. No movement from him at the moment. It looks as though he's got that job done. We'll have to wait and see whether or not he comes out. That Qatar dude has remained out though. 10 litres worth of fuel inside the tank of him. So he's going to have enough time
and fuel to get himself round for at least another lap after this one. Keeping an eye on the sectors. Does look as though Evan's put in a really competitive first sector, considering that's his first one out in these wet weather conditions. Hopefully Evan's been able to put some practice in these wet conditions, but his sector 1 time's looking fantastic. So K Morse has remained in the pits. Stealth Sheep has now returned to the pits. So looks as though these guys have had enough. Demobi has also come into the pit, so he's going to start right down the order. Demobi just struggling there for the pace of this one. Looks as though our championship standings are getting very, very interesting by the end of this race. We're about to see an absolute cracker of a race with our current championship leader finishing starting the race mid-pack with a lot of work to do and a lot of opportunity for accidents to happen. Only watching Uniclark go past the pit lane and over the line. No improvement from him. He is going to have one more shot at this in terms of knocking Uniclark off. Uniclark posted 2 laps and called it job done very early on. It looks as though the pace of the track is just slowing further and further the more that the qualifying session goes on. That's the wall that potentially Demobi's hit, unless it is just a glitch on my game that's showing with so much damage. I can't think of any other big walls that he could have hit. I'm sure we'll get that information from him when we return to the paddock at the end of this race. And that is the qualifying session over. We've got 6 drivers out there remaining to finish a lap. I do beg your pardon, 7 drivers out there remaining to finish a lap, but it does look as though, from my screens, that Tro was potentially bailed out of it. So we can just see the the red and blue car of Bobby Dazzler ahead of that guitar dude who we're currently tracking around the track. Looks as though with a red number next to him, he may well be on a caution from the race director for arbitrary track limits though, so that one could be invalidated. In all fairness, he has currently got white sectors on at the moment, so it doesn't look as though there's any improvement from Bobby Dazzler. It looks as though he's going to have to settle for 6th position unless Evan can do anything about it. That guitar dude is about to cross the line. Keep an eye out on his name, but it doesn't look as though there's going to be any improvement. We're now tracking around the pink coloured Actrol Vision number 13 car of Evan. I beg your pardon, it might well be number 6. My eyes just not that good. Number 8 got there in the end. Where is this lap going to land, Evan? He's gone green in both of his sectors. Comes across the old start finish into the current, and it looks as though it's no change from Evan. He's going to start at the back of the grid, so here is your running order. Looks as though Bobby Dazzler got himself a 1-place grid penalty somewhere within there, maybe crossing over the pit lane. So Uniclark and that guitar dude top out the front row. Uniclark getting a fantastic pole position there. Lightblade does enough for 3rd place. He's going to be alongside Stealth Sheep on that 2nd row. Then we've got K Morse and Bobby Dazzler making up the 3rd. Demobi only does enough for a 7th place starting position alongside Cov Carl. We've then got Lionsfoot and Tro side by side behind him, and then Evan making up the running order for tonight's 30-minute feature race. We are set for 13 laps, I believe, around Fuji. I will get that confirmed in a moment once we jump into this. So 15 laps, I do beg your pardon. 15 laps coming up. These guys are going to have 2 minutes to get themselves set. And then the race is on. K Morse has got a lot to do in 5th position in that BMW. We saw him shoot right through from 3rd to 1st. It's going to be a lot trickier this time around with an extra couple of cars in front of him. But the start from that BMW is so strong, I wouldn't put it past him. I imagine we're going to see a lot of bunching up from first, second, third and fourth to try and block the stampede of K Morse. We'll have to wait and see whether or not it fits into their tactic. So let me know your predictions for this one. Has Uniclark managed to dig out some mysterious pace inside that practice session that's just put him leaps and bounds ahead of anybody else? Or are we going to see the epic tactics of Demobi or Stealth Sheep come into play when they make their mandatory pit stops and find themselves on track in the right position to claim a race victory? We're about to get underway here in our feature race at Fuji. Here come the lights. And we're away in tonight's feature. Looks as though Lightblade bogged down off the line. K Morse has moved his way up into third, into second. Not done enough to manage to take first place, but he is having a look up the inside of Uniclark at the moment. Not close enough, I'm afraid, to say for him. But Uniclark does run very deep, and that's allowed K Morse to get up the inside. Coming up into Coca-Cola corner now, looks as though K Morse has got his nose ahead. All drivers through appearing to be cleanly so far. You see a couple of drivers just running ever so slightly wide. It looks as though Lightblade and Stealth Sheep have got themselves involved into something. We see them both returning to the track. That's not the ideal start for our current driver, second place in the championship. We spoke to him earlier in Stealth Sheep. That is not what he wanted at all. So back to the front. Looks as though Uniclark's managed to take the lead from K Morse. And that Qatar dude is running up the order ever so slightly, taking on Demobi at the moment. We're going three wide into this next corner. It looks as though it's the braking for Dunlop. It is indeed. All drivers getting very close there. No contact appears to be made, so they're all through quite cleanly. And we can see how much Lightblade has lost out there. He's right at the back of the running order. Uniclark runs a little bit deep into turn 13. That's going to allow that Qatar dude to take that one from him. K Morse looks as though he's going to try and pick the pockets of the both as well. So Uniclark has lost out to K Morse, but he makes a move up the inside. We saw him really progressive in his overtaking inside the sprint race, Uniclark, on that final corner, but he's not going to get it done now. In fact, it looks as though we've got a few drivers with the run on him. We'll jump into the chase mode. It looks as though Demobi's going to try and get alongside Uniclark here. I want to make sure that we don't see any contact with that big of a train behind these drivers. Let's jump back into trackside and see what happens in the braking into Daihatsu. K Morse looks as though he's got it done and dusted. We see a bit of a wild double turn in there from Uniclark. K Morse runs massively wide. That allows that Qatar dude to come through. And actually Bobby Dazzler and Demobi end up exchanging a little bit of paintwork there at the exit of that one. In fact, Demobi gets sandwiched. These guys need to get their heads straightened out, get the rise in the game and make sure that they don't ruin this race for each other. Looks as though it's all settled down there, but my heart was in my mouth when I saw Demobi sandwiched by Uniclark and Bobby Dazzler. So let's have a look at how far this one goes back. I do apologise if the spray's quite bad, but we've got a whole lot of action going up here between 6th and 2nd place. It does look as though K Morse is now about to be overtaken by Lionsfoot quite easily. K Morse appears to have lost most of his advantage from the start of that BMW as Bobby Dazzler runs massively wide into the braking area of Dunlop. K Morse comes alongside Lionsfoot here, but he's going to have to back off that one. Just running out of road in that case, it seemed. So let's have a look back up front with the rest of these drivers. In fact, that was mighty close, it seemed, from Bobby Dazzler. Cutting off the nose there off K Morse. K Morse looks to the inside. It looks as though Evans run massively wide. He comes back on track, just avoiding contact there with Lionsfoot, and it looks as though he's lifted his foot out a little bit just to allow those drivers to get past. All sorts of action going on here. We're only in lap 2 and already we've seen all sorts from these drivers. Let's jump back up the running order. Let's have a look at Demobi at the moment and how far back he is on that Qatar dude. That Qatar dude's pulled out around about 1.5 seconds so far. And it's not that big of a gap. K Morse looks as though he's managing to make his way up the order, but they're about to go 4 wide here into the braking zone of Daihatsu. Luckily, Evan and Lionsfoot ended up just backing out of that. Maybe it was just the camera angle, but you're definitely not going to get 4 cars around that corner. You'll fall back into line. K Morse gets the advantage, currently sat in 5th position. But he has got a very tight train coming in behind him. It looks as though Tro is the first one to make his first mandatory pit stop there. So Tro into the pits on lap 3. Let's have a look at this action behind. Just as I was making my notes, looks as though Bobby Dazzler has moved up, as has Lionsfoot. Looks as though Evan is currently jostling with Lightblade. Lightblade, of course, getting involved in some form of accident with Stealth Sheep, and I do believe that Stealth Sheep may also have made his pit stop. As we see Bobby Dazzler there, messing up his braking into Dunlop. Bobby Dazzler's head just appears to be on a bit of a wobble at the moment. Seeing quite a few mistakes from him. And that's seeing him falling down the order here. Gets overtaken by Evan, but loses out on that place once again. Let's just have a quick look at the car of Stealth Sheep. Let's see whether or not it's tracking right. I think he must have been in the pit lane to be that far back, because Tro has actually come out ahead of him. So let's get back to the action up front. Uniclark trying to chase down Demobi, who is in 2nd place. We can see the lead that Qatar dude's got in 1st place at the moment, ahead of the rest of these guys. In fact, Kof Karl's actually managed to get his way up into 5th place. He's currently challenging K Morse, who's made it all the way back through the pack to claim himself 4th position. As I bring up the current fastest laps. So that Qatar dude is currently leading it. He's got the purple lap at the moment. 153.6 is our current race pace. Uniclark unable to match his qualifying pace, but we very rarely see that happen anyway in any form of motorsport. Looks as though Lightblade's just made his way up into 6th place ahead of Lionsfoot. Will be interesting to see what happened between him and Stealth Sheep as the days unfold and any stewards inquiries that come in. Remember folks, both of these guys, members of staff here at Rubbins Racing, Lightblade and Stealth Sheep. It'll be interesting to see what happens. I'm sure it'll get mentioned. Let's move back up to the battle for 3rd place. Currently tracking Uniclark. He's hunting down Demobi ahead of him, and there isn't much of a gap, just over half a second at the moment. And looks as though Demobi's managing to pull out fastest Sector 2s and Sector 3s now. Wasn't the last time around, but Demobi's looking like the fastest all-round lap in these wet weather race conditions. So as the grid appears to have evened itself out, we see Kof Karl now deciding to make his pit stop. Let's see where this one puts him out in terms of the running order. I'll bring up the map so we can see him and where he's going to come out. And also looks as though Evan decides to make his pit. So it looks as though these two drivers now appear to be moving their way out of the pits. Is that Tro and Stealth Sheep now coming up the start-finish line? Does look as though it is. So a very quick pit stop, it seems, for Evan. That's going to benefit him ever so slightly. He just manages to make it out the pit lane ahead of Tro and Stealth Sheep, but not able to get his pace up in time, I don't believe. Let's see. He actually pulls up alongside into Daihatsu, alongside Stealth Sheep. Stealth Sheep looks as though he's got the run on him though. So Evan slips down into last position here after his pit lane. His pit strategy, sorry, didn't really seem to come off, despite him having a very, very quick pit stop from the look of it. So we're currently looking at Bobby Dazzler and his battle for between Lightblade with Lion's Foot behind him. Let's have a look at our timing boards at the moment. Looks as though Lightblade's got himself a 1 second penalty. Tro, on the other hand, that's a 10-second penalty. Unless that's consecutively cutting the track, I do believe that that might well be a speeding in the pit lane penalty that I mentioned earlier. Looks as though he's caught it quite quick for it only to be 10 seconds. We'll have to wait and see. So as we continue on through this, the battle between Bobby Dazzler and Lightblade continues on. Let's have a look what's going on up front. Looks as though Demobi's got himself within a second now of that Qatar dude. So yeah, currently he was just edging ahead a little bit, but his sector times are looking quicker by a couple of tenths. You can see how closely closely knit this top four is. Not much between these drivers whatsoever, and we see a mistake there from that Qatar dude. Just running a little bit deep. It doesn't look as though it's been a slowdown. Looks as though we caught it in time, but it's definitely going to have lost him a little bit of momentum as we see that lead to Demobi just falling ever so short into the approach into Panasonic corner. These four drivers will be looking to stay out as long as possible to try and gain any advantage, I do believe, and it looks as though K Morse is now making his move on Uniclark for third position. He's holding the inside line, but it does look as though Uniclark's able to get the drive. It looks as though he's holding back on that position, got a little bit of overspeed. It's all going to come down into the braking, I do believe. Who's going to be bravest or smoothest onto the brakes? And both of them look to be very equal to each other. No contact, which is what we like to see. Got Ben Gattier calling out that K Morse is going to get a podium here. Does look that way, as we see that Qatar dude made his pit stop there. Just missed that just in the corner of my eye, caught it in the end, and we can see him. It's landed him around about 7th position. He is back on track now though. So K Morse is in a good position here. Let's have a look, see whether or not there's any penalties. No penalties to speak of between our top four drivers at the moment. I do beg your pardon, there is a 1 second penalty to Lightblade, who's made his way up into 4th position after that pit stop of that Qatar dude. So you see that Qatar dude is around about 24 seconds behind the leader. If we can assume that he had quite an average pit stop, maybe of 3 or 4 seconds, around about 20 seconds added on just to get into the pit lane and get out of the pit lane once again. See K Morse making his way up into 1st position there, holding up the inside on Demobi. Demobi holds on for the inside line into Panasonic, and he's going to try and make sure that he blocks K Morse as much as he can. It looks as though there's a little bit of bumper to bumper contact there. Nothing much to speak of, as Demobi now looks as though he's about to come into the pits. Has he made it into the pit lane? Looks as though he has. He has indeed. Demobi decides that now is the time. He comes into his pit box, as does Uniclark. We're currently on lap 8 of 15, so over the halfway point of this race. And K Morse is currently out ahead. He's going to have about 20 seconds lead as the rest of the field decides that now is the time to come in. So everyone but K Morse has made their pit stop. It's all on K Morse now, really. If he can put together a couple of quick laps, build up as much of a gap as he can, he might well get a free pit stop here, find himself coming back out in first position. Definitely looks as though he's got it sorted. It all depends, of course, on how much engine damage he's got on, or whether or not he's decided to tell his pit crew in his pit strategy to repair any damage. Let's have a look at the action on track at the moment. We're looking at Uniclark and him hunting down the current third place of Demobi. So that guitar dude's found himself, after everybody else has come into the pits, bar K Morse, that guitar dude's found himself returning back into first position. In fact, the running order has pretty much returned to as it was, except of course for K Morse being at the front. Lap times are getting much slower, it seems. Even K Morse last time around setting a 154.32. Looking at the guys' sectors as well, since they've returned from the pits, they're obviously going to have a slightly slower sector 1 because of the speed differential going into the first corner. But the sectors across the board as well do look to be slowing down as the track warms up and the rain continues here. Some mild puddles forming, but not much in the way of standing surface water, which all of these guys will be happy about. It's pretty much the nemesis of any of our drivers. Interestingly, Stealth Sheep's managed to make his way up the order. He's currently chasing down Lightblade for a 6th position finish. I'll keep the map on so we can get a good idea of our race leader. He's the car that's miles ahead of everybody else. It looks as though there's a slowdown from Lightblade. That allowed Stealth Sheep to get right up alongside. No penalties being issued, but that almost caused a collision there. I'm sure Stealth Sheep will be having some choice words under his helmet about the way that Lightblade almost brake checked him, it seemed, but it was just a difference in speed, I believe. Not actually pressing the brakes, just lifting off where he wouldn't expect him to. Let's see whether or not Stealth Sheep can make a move into turn 1. We'll jump into chase cam actually as we follow these guys around. Doesn't look as though he's going to get it done there. Struggling a little bit on his entry into turn 1. Or should I say his exit out of turn 1, it seemed to be. Entry looked fine, just the midsection and exit of the corner looking to go a little bit awry as we see Lightblade there now crossing the track limit boundary. That's going to be a slowdown for him. In fact, it does sound as though we hear a couple of liftoffs from Stealth Sheep that he may well have had a slowdown too. Getting close. Quarter action markers against Uniclark and Demobi. Not that close at the moment, but they are looking to... Uniclark is looking to get himself a little bit closer ahead of him. Also got close quarter action from Lionsfoot and Bobby Dazzler. Let's have a look at this one. Lionsfoot looks as though he's losing a little bit of time. Bobby Dazzler there just heading up the inside. Didn't look as though he crossed the white lines of the track limit, so that looked to be almost perfect from Bobby Dazzler. Obviously got his head better into the game now. We saw a couple of early mistakes from him, and that's what's seen him drop down the running order. So Lionsfoot continues to remain in 8th place, not challenged too harshly by Bobby Dazzler. Let's have a look at K Morse at the moment. Got a lead of 27 seconds. We are on lap 10 of 15. He is going to have to still make his pit stop. But with almost 27 seconds lead ahead, that's going to put him in a very healthy position for when he does come into that pit stop. No time penalties apart from the ones mentioned earlier, so 1 second time penalty to be added on at the end of this race for Lightblade, 10 seconds for Tro, so it looks as though Tro is going to finish this race in last place unless anything catastrophic happens to our back markers here. So let's get back into the action. Have a look at Stealth Sheep at the moment. He's still hunting down Lightblade. Remember folks, there's a 1 second penalty to be added onto Lightblade, so if they finished as they are currently, the 6th position would go to Stealth Sheep. He is going to want to take that position on track though, because Cov Carl isn't too far away from Stealth Sheep once he gets past Lightblade. K Morse continues to remain out on track at the moment. Lap 11 of 15. See there. Looks as though they got mighty close to each other. It looks as though it's just a bit of a deceptive angle. Jump back into the chase cam so we can get a good idea of where they are on track. Do apologise for the spray, obviously. Been raining all day here at Fuji. So plenty of spray to speak of. Jump back trackside as they go down the start-finish straight. Looks as though we've got some action between Tro and Evan at the back of that field. We'll take a look at how this one goes down into the braking area of Daihatsu. Looks as though Stealth Sheep's just pulled out a great looking lap in terms of race pace. Still not enough in terms of his track position though until he can get past Lightblade. Lightblade though looks as though he's getting ever closer to Cov Carl. Cov Carl losing out on around about a second to Lightblade that time around. And Lightblade was a little bit slower than Stealth Sheep, so that's why these guys are starting to approach our 5th place position of Cov Carl. So K Morse comes down the start-finish line. Is he going to enter the pits? Looks as though he's now decided that now is the time to enter the pits. 27 seconds or so was the split time between first place of K Morse and second place of that Qatar dude before he entered the pit. We'll stick about with him. No tyres changed. We wouldn't expect that. It looks as though it is just damage repairs and he's away. It's a pretty quick pit stop. 15 seconds currently showing as the difference. Looks as though they're now coming down the start-finish line. The start-finish straight. Let's have a look and jump into the chase cam here of that Qatar dude. Is it going to be enough for K Morse to maintain his first place position? It's not, I'm afraid. K Morse just out on track. And is it going to be enough to stay ahead of Demobi? In fact, not sure what's happened there. That Qatar dude has been disconnected. Absolute tragedy there. Looks as though K Morse has been given a gift though. That Qatar dude gets disconnected on lap 12 of 15. Just as he'd taken first place back. Looks as though K Morse runs a little bit wide in his battle for Demobi. He ends up coming together with them. Demobi able to hold his car on track. Of course, if Demobi did have to counteract then and K Morse got the position, he would have had to give it back under our track etiquette rules after causing a collision. It looks as though Demobi now looking to try and gain as much as he can. Drama unfolding here at Fuji. I'll knock the map off because we have no need for it anymore. All drivers have now pitted. Huge bit of unfortunate connection look there with that Qatar dude. Can't believe he's been kicked from that after having what was appearing to be an absolute cracker of a race. So Demobi leads this one to K Morse. Uniclark is not too far behind by around about a second at the moment of our first and two. Looks as though we've got some action with Stealth Sheep and Lightblade. Stealth Sheep has now got ahead of him. He's got Kovkarl up next. And it looks as though he's gaining on him pretty quickly. Let's see what K Morse can do. Underbraking into turn one though against Demobi as Demobi is about to begin lap 13. So 3 laps remaining of tonight's feature. K-Morse looked as though he made gains there under braking. Demobi potentially playing it a little bit safe. He knows how tail happy that BMW can get, and he goes defensive on the entrance into Coca-Cola. Looks as though he's run a little bit wide though, as we see him there collecting a little bit of AstroTurf and a lot of curb, and that's going to allow K-Morse to breeze on through. Demobi there potentially just overcooking it and understeering, it seemed. Demobi's got a bit of a mountain to climb now. It's got an instant half a second lead. Half a second deficit to K-Morse. I'm sure that Ben Gattier will be cheering K-Morse along on with this one. He did call it, and it looks as though K-Morse is going to be on for his first back-to-back wins in the season. In fact, the sprint race was his first win of the season, so it's going to be a really fantastic Fuji GP for K-Morse if he can get this job done. He appears to be building upon the deficit to Demobi at the moment. Let's see if Demobi's got anything in the tank or up his sleeve to try and pull this one back. Interesting as well, Stealth Sheep has since got past Kovkarl for 4th position. So it looks as though he's going to be in the running order. Huge disappointment for that Qatar dude. After a disconnect from him, sees him drop out of his first place position. He looked to be in a pretty comfortable one as well. Looked as though he was given a couple of seconds grace ahead of K-Morse after he came out of the pits, and K-Morse was instantly challenged by Demobi as well. So who knows what would have happened there. We are seeing lots of internet activity during this lockdown period, no matter where you are in the world, and that is playing havoc with a lot of connections in competitive sim racing. Unfortunately, this is just the way that it can be sometimes. K-Morse now begins the penultimate lap here at Fuji. He's got 1.5 seconds, so he's made up a lot of time ahead of Demobi in a very short amount of laps. Looks as though Lightblade has got past Kovkarl as well. Kovkarl doesn't look as though he's going to be giving that one up easily, but it does look as though on his split times, quite a large difference between the two drivers, especially in Sector 1. Kovkarl actually just under 2 seconds slower in Sector 1 this time around. No extra penalties to speak of, just 1 second to Lightblade and 10 seconds being applied to Troz at the end of this. Lightblade there running especially wide. That's definitely going to be a slowdown or a penalty added on. Let's have a look what's happening between Bobby Dazzler and Lionsfoot in this battle for 7th place. This has been going on for quite some time. Doesn't look as though there's any moves being made. We will, of course, keep our eye out on the leader. Looks as though K-Morse, it's his to lose, though. Got over a 2.5 second lead as he comes across the start. Finish straight, I believe, about to... in fact, let me just check this. He is indeed. Round that last corner, about to start his final lap. It's been a great race from K-Morse. I did think that he got his pit strategy ever so slightly wrong, but it looks as though he's been able to pull it back with a little bit of luck from a disconnect from that Qatar dude. And a small mistake from Demobi. Just one little bit of understeer, it seemed, coming into Coca-Cola corner. The one that we're just seeing on screen now looked as though he was a little bit wide on the exit of it. And that's when K-Morse pounced all over him and got that move done, and he's just been ahead ever since. Let's have a look at this battle and how it's transpiring for 5th place between Lightblade and Kovkarl. Kovkarl looking for answers to Lightblade's questions at the moment, just not really able to find anything. Back to our leader then. Looks as though he's just exited turn 10, I believe it is. Turn 9, sorry, into Dunlop. Into this technical twisty section. And coming around into nets. into Panasonic corner for the final time this evening. Fantastic driving from K Morse with a little bit of luck due to a dodgy connection from that Qatar dude. Been an absolute gift from him, but back-to-back wins in the BMW in the wet. Who would have called it? Fantastic driving this evening from K Morse as he takes first position. It's going to be enough for Demobi to take second place as he crosses the line now. Third place from Uniclark. Uniclark showed some great pace in qualification. That's enough for him. Fourth place is going to go to Stealth Sheep. Did look as though we got a little bit of a recovery there, as well as a little bit of good grace. Will be interesting to know what happened between him and Lightblade though. In that first lap, we saw both drivers drop right down the running order. So fourth place to Stealth Sheep, fifth place goes to Lightblade. But we see him drop down into sixth after that 1 second penalty applied by the race director. Looks as though Bobby Dazzler has done enough ahead of Lionsfoot to take on seventh position. We're about to see those two cross the line neck and neck, but just does enough. Tro is going to finish in ninth position, even with his 10-second race director penalty ahead of Evan. Evan having to join us quite late due to work commitments. Looks as though a little bit of experience inside these wet weather conditions just costing him ever so slightly there. So as we wait for Evan to cross the line, remember folks, you'll be able to join our latest addition to the Rubbins Racing commentary team on Thursday night at 8 o'clock UK time or British summer time for our Thursday Night Lights Championships. Until then, we will see you once again in competitive league racing on Friday night in the Ginetta Championship, and once again on the Sunday for the GT3 Championship, where you'll be joining me at 8 o'clock PM UK time. Those are our running order. There has been no changes. It was just the switch around between Kovkarl and Lightblade. I'd like to thank all of the drivers for persevering inside these wet weather conditions around this fantastic Fuji circuit, and of course all of our viewers. I do hope you've enjoyed the action as much as I have this evening. I will be posting up the latest Touring Car Championship standings as soon as they become available on our Instagram and our Twitter page. If you don't follow us there, then be sure to look us up, hit that follow button, and you won't miss out on any of the action. I've been your host for the evening. My name is Murphy, aka MuffDog86 if you race with me, and I will see you all again on the GT3 Championships on Sunday. But by all means, please follow us on Thursday Night Lights with our co-commentator Lecky2000. Make sure that you don't miss any of the action by hitting the like and subscribe button on this stream, and I will see you all again next time. Please stay safe out there. Take care.